Welcome to The Chat. Come behind the inbound scenes of some of the world's fastest growing companies. For the past 10 years as Chatmetrics, we've had an exclusive inside view of how these industry leaders are revolutionising inbound marketing and sales across diverse sectors. Each week, we bring you conversations with top minds in marketing and sales who share insider secrets and strategies for driving inbound success. Join us on The Chat, your front row seat to the future of inbound. Today on The Chat, John Karsant is the co-founder of Level Up Leads, helping companies supercharge their outbound sales efforts. We're going to dive into his journey, the lessons he's taken into business, and his insights on GDM strategies, partnerships, and scaling revenue. John, welcome to The Chat.
Thanks for having me on, Terry. Appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Jumping right in, what are some of the most effective GDM strategies you've seen working for scaling B2B companies at the moment?
I think this has changed over time. My answer probably would have been different a few years ago, but right now it's the phones, 100%. We are seeing the most success on the phones with our SDRs, cold calling. It's not even close. Right now, I'd say across email, LinkedIn, and cold calling, about 80% of our meetings are coming from the phones. So that is by far the most successful. And here's another interesting point is it also, a lot of our clients come to us, they don't have everything dialed in, not even their ICP, and they're trying to learn along the way. It's part of the reason why they hire us. And the phones is the quickest way to pivot and understand what people are seeing and how they're receiving our message. Whereas an email is just much tougher to get that feedback.
It is, because if it doesn't resonate, it's just a complete black hole. Whereas at least when you're on the phone, you get some type of response.
That's it. Correct.
What do you think's driving that? Because I know that from our perspective, growing our business, I built this business from cold calling in the very beginning. Then we've switched in around about 2020 to much more of an email focus. And we're sort of in that no man's land at the moment, heading back to doing a bit of email, but I'm thinking that cold calling is something we'll be looking into based on conversations like this one that I've heard from many other people as well. What do you think's causing that shift, I guess, from emails being as effective to the phones?
Yeah, a few years ago, email was great. It was awesome. You could send out 100 emails and you could get like an interested lead or two from that. And now the numbers aren't even close to that. I think the main reason here is why emails become more challenging is the market is more saturated. There are more and more tools that offer an email function to it. For example, like a email hunter. It's been around for a long time. It's typically known for finding and validating email addresses. They add on an email function. Another LinkedIn tool designed for LinkedIn outreach, add on an email function. And so I think there's more and more tools in the market. Data is easier and easier to get access to, and it's cheaper. And it's much cheaper to run outbound campaigns. All you need to do is set up the campaign yourself and run it. You don't need that much involved. Whereas cold calling, it's more expensive, especially if you're hiring somebody native. You're going to be paying their salary, paying for all the tools. You typically need to, finding mobile numbers are more expensive than finding emails. And then you typically need someone to train them. You can't just let them dial on their own without any supervision or adjusting to the scripts and things like that. So it's just a much more expensive channel to run. And plus, no one wants to do it. Even the SDRs on my team, I know they don't want to be doing this job forever, right? So it's a tough job. You're facing rejection a lot. And I think due to that, there's less people making cold calls than sending emails.
The old call reluctance. Email is almost like the easy way out of getting out of cold calling. And I think that, you've hit the nail on the head when you talk about accessibility. There's tools now, one step further. One thing just to add to the items that you mentioned, I think now is that there's availability for domains to be set up, burner domains to be set up, and mass relevant emails be sent out with things like these tools, these platforms, emailing platforms that offer things like spin tax and A/B testing of sequences. And so, you can sit there and spend a lot of time setting up email sequences and then go and blast 10,000 people. In the smaller businesses, it might be okay just to get a couple of responses and a couple of leads. But the problem is that does mess the market. I'll use that language to be a little bit more polite. It pollutes the market for everybody else, really, when inboxes are just getting filled with absolute spam. I took a quick glance at and I never do this. I never look at my spam box. Quite frankly, I'm of the opinion that if you can't get your shit together to get into my inbox, then
Mhm.
I don't want to talk. It's not somebody that I should be talking to. But you'd be shocked. I was actually quite shocked at some of the large organizations that have ended up in my spam box, and I can only just think that someone in their business somewhere is sending emails from the main domain out to a cold list and being marked as spam. Look, I get why emails came as a wave and why they were readily adopted. It's the easy way away from the cold calling, but I don't think that cold calling. Do you think that either cold calling has ever been less effective?
I don't know. I think once you can dial it in, it really can work for you in your favor. Like there's not there's it's just so much easier to have an actual conversation. You can really get a feel for their vibe, like that gut instinct of whether or not you know they're interested or they're trying to get you off the phone. Like you can really feel that. It's much harder to gauge those types of things or text message like have you ever this happens, this is not even work related, but in personal life, you get a text message and either you sent it or you receive it and you take it out of context and it's if you receive it completely different, then you kind of like reread it later and you're like, oh, you have a different feeling about that. And it's like, I think it's much easier to understand how someone feels on a phone and in a conversation. And it's not like everyone's going to say yes. It's not going to always happen, but it is a lot easier. Like one of the things we talk about on our sales calls is we have your calendar open when we're making these calls. So when they are interested, all we need to do is just find the time. And so it's much easier to get calls booked in the calendar. The other thing I'd say is I think there's waves of what's working. Like there was a while email worked really well. I think calling's working really well now. And I think there's going to be cycles as people start to pick up on things. Same thing with just trends in the outbound lead gen space, right? Permission-based openers. Now we're kind of seeing it. Everyone's using it. So it's starting to sound repetitive. So you kind of need to switch things up a little bit. So we'll see how long this cycle lasts. But right now, yeah, we're finding the phones to work very well.
Mm. It's interesting. I actually doubt whether the phones have ever been less effective. In my mind, I mean, and this will sort of show my age a bit, but I was thrown a physical hard copy of a Yellow Pages book on my desk when I switched from a fairly senior accounting role into a very junior sales role. And the sales manager that I'd been giving a hard time each month about not hitting his budget, actually, ended up working for him. And so he threw the Yellow Pages at me and said, call. And that was in 1992. And I can say it was certainly the biggest difference between then and now is everybody used to answer the phone.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas now with mobile technology and the proliferation of cold calling and the technology that will come up and say, potential spam number, that type of thing, people can decide whether it's somebody they know or not they want to answer for. Um, but it's worked all the way through. In 2015, when I started this business, cold calling cut through. We sent some emails initially. We did some email blasts. We did some email relevance, but it was cold calling that was absolutely the way to go. And even now, I find that you talked about feelings, and it's a little bit offside. Well, I talk about this a little bit in the content that I write, and that people don't remember what you say, but they remember how they made you feel. When you get
Mm-hmm.
an
That's
email
yeah.
in your box and the email is not relevant, or you've just missed one thing, it might be just that you've made an assumption about a particular ACV or deal size, and it's off. That'll just can switch them off from the entire message. Whereas when you're in a conversation with somebody, you can hear the tonality. When you've made a mistake, you can back up, you can show some humility, and you can actually impact truly how that person feels on the other side of the phone.
You mentioned 2015 and cold calling, and that was when I had my first real like behind a computer job was
Mm-hmm.
2015 working remote, and I was in the solar lead generation space. And I couldn't agree more. Like I wasn't doing heavy cold calls, but I was cold calling. But to your point, the email cadence, like the email sequencers, were just starting around then. I remember I was during that job in 2015 that I learned how like the ability to do a sequencer. And it was like, oh my God, I can't believe you can do this. You can set it up and you can set the times and everything. But like before that, maybe I'm off by a year or two. Maybe it started in 2014, but it wasn't that easy to send out these emails. And then a lot of things were bouncing, and calling was the way to do it. That's how you did a lot of business, and that's how it's been going for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's one of those things where if with email, our emails were very effective. I'm interested to see how our new campaigns go. We're launching again in the next couple of weeks. With email, I think the point timeliness is the biggest challenge. With all this discussion about intent data and there's businesses and platforms now that will send you with there's certain triggers where maybe somebody's moved a role or changed an organization. So timing is always the biggest challenge for me. Relevance is difficult at scale, but there's so many tools now that allow even that to be much easier than it's been in the past. I've mentioned before, but the A/B testing of different sequences, the spin tax available in emails, tools like Clay that scrape the web for little pieces or snippets of information about individuals that can make the message resonate from a relevance perspective. And I think that sort of changed the world a bit with email. So we'll see how that goes. But look, do you have any thoughts on balancing the difference between inbound versus outbound in high growth environment, and particularly whether it's yourself or with the clients that you work with?
I'll speak on my own company just because I think it's a lot easier with our clients. It's you kind of they come to you with a certain they're all in a different stage of company
Yeah.
to just getting started to well established. And then typically when they're hiring us, some will give us inbound leads, but they typically want to deal with the inbound leads because they're warmer and they generated those. So we don't always get the luxury of that. But what I can say to level up leads is I got started off outbound. It's the only thing I really knew. And that's how I grew the business. But I started to over time, and I wish I did this sooner, but build up a brand and an inbound engine. And it's certainly a work in progress, but that is now how we're setting a lot of our meetings is they're coming inbound, they're warmer, and the sales cycle's shorter. So huge. And I think it's a long process. It's not something that you're just going to do in a few months. It takes a while. You got to build up the case studies, the third-party reviews like Clutch and G2. You have to have a good website. Like all these things factor into somebody actually deciding to click that schedule a meeting button. And that has been a game changer. But I think a blend of both. There are some companies we'll work with that are only working inbound leads. And I'm like, well, what about the outbound? Which is why they come to us in that circumstance. But
Yeah.
I think you should be doing both as a company.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The inbound it's a long play, as you say, and it can be almost a fruitless labor of love for a very long time before you start to see it pay off. But
Yeah.
the beauty of those inbound leads, the few that we've had come in, because it's an area that I haven't really been focused on until about last November. But when you do start to get those inbound leads come through, it's phenomenal.
100%. Yeah.
I had a conversation with an inbound lead last Wednesday morning. They'd signed up by lunchtime, and we were live on their website on Friday.
Wow. There you
And
go.
and
For
and,
anyone
and we've
listening,
we've booked 4 sales qualified meetings for them since then.
that's awesome.
It is, but that came from interestingly, that came from a random conversation that I'd had on Reddit,
Oh,
and I'm not
that
even.
is random.
It's not. I'm not. It was very random that I was even on Reddit. It's not somewhere that I usually frequent, but it was just fascinating the way that whole process had come through. You never know where it's going to come through. You never know really, as much. There's so much talk these days about the dark web and dark social and trying to attribute where your inbound, where your marketing efforts are paying off. It was bizarre, like literally 5-minute visit to Reddit, and somebody read that particular comment, thought that's what you
Yeah,
need. So
that's
it was,
strange.
it was bizarre. It was bizarre.
I wonder if there's any other opportunity on Reddit.
It's a time thing too, and where you're going to spend your time. We've done pretty well out of LinkedIn so far, so It's about how far are you going to spread yourself thin. For us personally, I mean, in the last 12 months, or when in the last 6 months, really, we've launched the podcast. I've got active on LinkedIn again. We're about to launch our email campaigns next week. We've reactivated our social media in terms of Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. The YouTube channel, we've put quite
Mhm.
a lot of content on that as well. It's just another step. I think for us in terms of B2B, there'll be one or two of those channels. Instagram will probably drop away before we go and step into another one again. It's you got to be in there long enough to see what the results are going to be before you make a decision to move somewhere else. I mean, that's one thing that I've learned about strategy over the years. You've got to be careful not to jump around too much because you never know on the cusp of something. Yeah. But we're getting
You
pretty
never.
well long enough in Instagram. Instagram's not a place for us. So it's really, and we haven't really put too much effort into it. It's just been, oh, let's just post everything else that we do in through through Instagram as well and see if anything sticks. But it hasn't been.
Yeah, I can attest to that too. I've like thought about the Instagram or TikTok, and it's like I feel like YouTube's so much easier for our space, and I don't know. I just uh, haven't done the. We have an account, but it's almost non-existent, and so it's crossed my mind. But I just feel like YouTube is creating content like this, creating clips. I just feel like is a much better use of time right now.
Yeah. And so that so you're saying that you're on YouTube, not on TikTok?
I'm not on TikTok. Thought about it quite a bit. We have a LinkedIn page, a Instagram page, but it's not really active at all.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting just on TikTok for a minute. It's one of those places where I see it strong for e-commerce.
Yeah.
Well, I've done a little bit of research over the last month or so. It seems that there is more B2B there at the moment, but it is very early days. And I think it's one of those cases where if you're an influencer and your intention is to grow a huge audience and continue a path that you're already on, then yeah, should B2B definitely in TikTok. But I think from our perspective, I have no aspirations of this podcast becoming, the next Joe Rogan experience. So it's not one of those things that I have too much of an appetite for. And quite frankly, I really just abhor social media. Full stop. It's a labor of hate for me, unfortunately.
Yeah. And it may vary company to company, right? And who you're, like you said, at e-commerce might make more sense. If I think about who our typical buyer is, it's probably someone between the age of 30 to 60,
Yeah.
probably even in more like 40, 50s is the sweet spot. And they're not on TikTok. There are some, but it's just like most of the people are not there. So
Yeah.
you also have to understand your audience and where they're hanging out.
Exactly. Exactly. Look, you have built a pretty strong partnership ecosystems. What's the secret to a successful partnership strategy?
Like just being in the space and being well known, right? Like me posting stuff on LinkedIn. Like I even just a friend of mine was consulting for a company and he reached out to me directly. And now the CEO called me this morning and we're going to work together. And so like I built, people are aware and like they will recommend us or like they'll leave a job and go to a new job and they'll want to bring us in. So like those are the types of relationships I've built.
Yeah.
I don't have too many partnerships. Like one, I'll shout out Cloud Task with Amir, who I know you are friendly with.
Mm.
Like that, it could be a partnership where they are generating some interest, and then they'll pass over that interested lead to us, and we'll take over that conversation. And of course, they get a cut. So there's a few of those. I wish I had more, but there's a few of those out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, I've found the relationship with Amir to be excellent. He's very proactive. Cloud Task has been an excellent company, and it's been it's the first marketplace partnership that we've stepped into or dipped our toe in the water with, and it seems good so far.
Yeah, we are they also on the hiring side. We've hired some people through them as well. So it's been a nice in that sense to be able to see talent quickly through the videos in their marketplace and hire quickly when needed.
Excellent.
So that's been nice.
Excellent. So you mentioned some time in the solar industry. I mean, in my mind, certainly here in Australia, the solar cold calling solar companies are almost the bane of every housewife at home trying to cook dinner at 5:30 on a weeknight. What was that experience like for you?
It was it was an incredible experience for learning how to run a startup or a business. Not that I got to see everything, but we were so small. I was the first sales guy that I learned so much just because there wasn't other bodies. I would ended up doing a lot of different things, wearing a lot of different hats. And at the time it was like, man, this sucks. I'm like not getting any money for all this work. And I look back on it, I'm like, that was the best experience I could have ever had to get, to start Level Up Leads. And that was really good. Now, in terms of the solar industry, like I just had to learn on the fly. I didn't know anything about solar. And so it was interesting. So we were selling leads. So I was making B2B sales, but we were selling B2C leads to them.
Yep.
So it was an interesting play. So we were generating the B2C leads on our own, but on them B2B. And so it was like a good way to get a feel for how that process and ecosystem works. That space was interesting because there's all these regulations between states and countries, what makes solar more like the incentives and whether or not someone is like likely going to sign up based off of something expiring. Do they have those in Australia? Do they have like is in place?
Most definitely. And so one of our early clients was a solar company. So they had their own call center. They were doing outbound calls, but they were also increasing their marketing spend. And so we sat on their website, qualifying the website visitors and really giving them enough information to turn them into qualified buyers. It was a very interesting experience because this organization went from relatively small to all of a sudden I'm watching like literally tens of thousands of website visitors. They were spending a lot of money on marketing. And I'd had a couple of chats with the CEO. He seemed to be, how would I describe him? Almost roguish in his approach. Let's build they had 5 people in the call center to start with. And then they built that out to 150 people over 6
Whoa.
months. And it was like just boom, everything's just gone supersized. And I thought, I wonder if these guys are going to be too big too fast. But they had the deal. I could see the lead flow that was coming in from the website, let alone what they were getting through their call center. So I knew that, there certainly was demand for what they were doing. And they were just at that right timing where there were government incentives and there was government deadlines in terms of those incentives being closed. And it was almost to the extent here in Australia where very, very low nominal cost from the homeowner, and the government subsidies were very large. Unfortunately, they were selling, and it was all based on Tesla Powerwalls, was the banks. And unfortunately, Tesla put a 6-month delay on the Powerwalls coming through, and it killed the business. They missed the rebates. They had to refund all of the money. Well, there was no money to refund because they'd built out this huge call center, and it went from 150 mile an hour to zero in 1.2 seconds. It was a terrible thing to watch, and that was back in 2016, and that was a supply chain issue. The experience that we've all just come through from 2020 onward in terms of logistics and supply chain issues with anything that's a physical product. I've seen firsthand back then, and my prior experience in the steel industry can, sort of attest to that when you've got building timelines and deadlines and so forth for liquidated damages. But from the solar industry, same here in Australia. We had those deadlines, but unfortunately for that company, they went too big too soon. I'm pretty
That's
sure
brutal.
if they weren't so big and they had enough cash to manage through the people that didn't want to wait, the government was going to honour the rebates that had been signed up for, but the problem was a lot of the individuals, a lot of the customers just didn't want to wait another 6 months. They wanted their money back. So that's what caused the problem for them.
Yeah.
It's an interesting space, the solar industry. And I get what you're talking about from generating B2C leads. That's the product, but you're selling to B2B.
Yeah.
To companies that, you're in the lead gen space there.
The other interesting thing about that space, and something that doesn't happen in B2B, at least in my experience, but leads are sold multiple times. So we had like either a solar company that would buy one lead exclusively, or you had based on the zip code and parameters, you could see it was being sold like 3 or 4 times. And it was like a very interesting concept to see the back end on how it all worked, and then like what type of information was being submitted and what was being filtered out. And so it was a good learning experience on seeing the back end of that.
It's one of those areas that, so B2B tech is one space that we're in. We're also pretty strong in finance, strong in education, strong in industrial products as well. And it's one of those conversations that my business partner, my co-founder, and I have had with regards to, we could literally set up a lead gen business, pick an industry like insurance, for instance, and, set up a lead gen industry. The reason we didn't do that is because the way that we provide our service, we're very personalized and it's very focused on the individual company. And we really felt that part of our value proposition was helping organizations avoid having to double pay for leads that have been already shopped around the marketplace and, have got people chasing them all over. Once you own that space and you've got website traffic and visitors coming to your website and you can generate leads from there, I mean, that's the utopia
It's a
for any
ticket.
organization, really. Yeah, that's right. You own it. You own it. And it's interesting, places like CloudTask, for instance, they could easily be in that environment where they have an inquiry coming in for a particular product. They've got 5 providers on their platform in that particular vertical that solves that problem.
Mhm.
It's almost the same sort. I always look at marketplaces as the same sort of thing and why I've avoided them in the past. But I'm enjoying the experience with CloudTask. Amir's doing an excellent job there as far as I'm concerned. So yeah, it's I guess my natural born cynicism hasn't played through at all.
Yeah.
So what part has AI played in your business to date, and how do you see that changing in the future?
Well, we talked about the AI. Well, we talked about more so like more and more tools coming out. A lot of them AI backed or AI functionality. There's AI SDRs, which are becoming more popular, especially on the email side of things, not the calling. But the way we're using it is on the calling side is, so one, we use Orem as our dialer. They've been great. And they give us AI transcripts of every call. So it's very easy to take notes and provide feedback. But the other cool thing is we started using a tool, again, AI based, that plugs into Orem, and separate tool, separate company. And it allows us to set up an AI bot based off our persona for our client, their ICP. And then it allows our reps to get practice in based off who we're trying to target and practice the script ahead of the
Ah,
time that we're actually launching with the client. And then it also plugs into Orem and analyzes live calls. So that is one way, like, for example, how we're leveraging AI to not like directly with the client, but directly out in-house so we can improve. No, I think SDRs, they get a little, I would too, if I was in their shoes, having to do that in front of a manager. And if you can practice on your own time, even better.
yeah, role plays are the bane of most salespeople's lives. But they're one of the greatest things you can possibly do. That practice. I mean, it's like anywhere else in any other industry. There's a lot of practice that happens before you actually get out to do your, apply your trade. Usually, sales is one of those things where it can be a couple of quick conversations, a bit of training, and then you're out into the thrown into the coal face. So how have you seen that impacting the results or the ramp time? What's been the outcome of that for your team?
Clients that don't have the biggest total addressable market, so it's maybe a little bit smaller. So rather than wasting, I wouldn't want to say wasting, but rather than learning on the fly with actual people in their
And
TAM,
burning part of the team potentially, yeah.
exactly, that we can do it ahead of time. We don't charge for onboarding with our clients. So yeah, sometimes they want to be quick to the market. We're typically like a week, 10 days to launch, but we say no rush, no rush. Like, let's just let the SDR get a little bit of training and practice in, specifically or especially with the clients that don't have the biggest total addressable market.
Are you able to adjust scripts or call scripts based on feedback through the calls? Or like, I mean, obviously you'd imagine you'd start with a particular script from the client. Or how does that work? What does that actually look like?
So we can set up different scripts based off who we're targeting, like personas, and you could set up the AI bot accordingly. Um, and then you could also adjust the bot based off of like nice, rude, things like that to make it harder to set the meeting. And part of it is like, yeah, we want them to set the meeting, but we want them to practice the objections and how to handle those, because that's what's going to come up, and that's going to be the difference. And so that's huge. I personally don't have a lot of experience using it. Patrick, who we both know, is the one managing that, and he gets to see all the insights on how that works, and he's helping set up these AI bots for our SDRs before they launch. It's very helpful to be able to practice those, and then be able to handle them before we actually start. And it's very nice. We started working with this company maybe 4 to 5 months ago, and it's just an extra selling point. And it also just helps us do better as a company and be more efficient, right?
And so when you onboard somebody, do they have to come to you with the phone scripts that you'll use? I mean, is it traditionally someone that's done calling in the past, or you mentioned that you had a company that's been doing email or focused on inbound, and the conversation was about outbound. Did they come with scripting, or is that something you help develop?
We develop it. 90% of the time we're developing that, but it is a collaborative approach. Occasionally companies will have something already, which we'll work off of. It's rare they have something that's working. Otherwise, they typically would just be doing it in-house. But there has been a few times. But yeah, most of the time we're creating it. We'll create a few versions. We'll get their feedback. We'll collaborate on it, ultimately finalize it, and then test it in the market.
Yeah.
And
how long generally is? Sorry.
Oh, so I was going to say, last thing is, it's pretty rare we set up something with the client, it stays and it's just perfect forever, right? There's always adjustments we're making or adding things in, no matter whether it's email, calling, LinkedIn, there's always adjustments going on.
And how long is it generally? Let's say, have you ever been in a situation where you've started calling and found that the messaging was just completely off point and you've had to go through and readjust? What sort of time frame or number of calls is sort of involved to adjust it to get positive outcomes?
Yeah, all the time. A common one is someone will fill out the onboarding form with a certain set of information. We filter, we onboard, we start, and then like someone else will come in from the organization with contradicting information. And it's very common, like the CEO will come in or something, or there's a new hire. And then, so it's like, but no, you said this. And so we'll have to adjust the script, the targeting. Sometimes it's just one, but it's just often what that stems down to is like, they just didn't have everything down, their ICP, and they're still learning. And yeah, we're helping with that phase of trying to understand who to target and what to say.
Do you, so in terms of the data and the TAM, is that something that comes from them? Is that something that you help with?
We source all the data. Okay. Occasionally clients will give us a company list, which is nice. Hey, we know we want to target these 1,000 companies or 2,000 companies, but we need you to source the contacts. That's great, but not required. What we'll typically do is get the data or their ICP, and then we'll send the client a sample list, and we'll try to like give them as much variety as possible for the company size, titles, things like that. And then they approve the sample list, and then we'll source everything from there.
Okay.
Yeah, that's an important aspect, because if you're like dialing wrong numbers or it's not right, like you're just wasting our time and money. So it's important we get that.
That's one of the reasons I asked the question. It's harder to get accurate phone data. And look, I found that one of the things that when we were dialing here originally in Australia, Lucia was probably the best mobile phone data for here in Australia. And then since then, and when we started to call into the US, it sort of accuracy seemed to drop off a lot. And then there were other providers that worked better for us there. What about the next step? I mean, in terms of the data, do you do any cleansing of phone numbers? I've heard of things where you want to find the numbers that actually answer or that are verified numbers. Do you do anything along those lines at all to help increase your productivity?
Yeah, we typically are validating things externally from any system. So it's just, I wish that weren't the case, but a lot of these data providers have gotten better. That is for sure, but it's still not great. And so we end up having to pay for multiple data providers to, one, fill in the gaps, but two, for extra validation. Like we use Lucia, but not that much. Like we have all these different, we may have Lucia for a certain reason or a certain market where the data might be better, or they may provide intent, but the other one doesn't. So we're using all sorts of data providers, but then we'll externally validate through, something like Clay or like Hunter. and what about emails, and then also the phone numbers.
Okay. Do you do anything further with the phone numbers? Heard of things like, phone ready leads and so forth that will send them through some type of calling process to validate whether they're going to answer, whether it goes to message bank, voicemail, that type of thing.
Yeah, that works better with an individual company. It doesn't work for us because we don't have that type of luxury and time, and then it's also more expensive.
Yeah.
So if it was like an individual company and you want to do that for your internal team, that would make more sense. But for us as an agency, it doesn't. We don't have that type of luxury.
I think for an individual company, if you're not using something like a parallel dialer like Orem as well, you would want to do that if you've got people there, virtually clicking a button in their CRM every time they're dialing, then, you'd want to make sure that they're getting through to the most likely numbers to answer. You've
Yeah.
got a little bit of leeway when you're using parallel dialers.
There's
Out of
also,
out of
sorry, I was just going to say one more thing to your question about which numbers to call. In Orem, they will give you a sense on which numbers are like, I think they have something like called hot leads or hot numbers, and
Okay.
they'll give you a sense on like which ones to dial first or more likely to pick up. I don't know how they
Okay.
do it. It's probably some AI detection.
Well, I mean, they must have all of their clients are calling, millions and millions of numbers. So they must have some reference of which numbers answer and which numbers don't. I mean, I'm sure they don't have any. I mean, look, their platform, that to me would be probably one of the biggest values in a calling platform to be able to say, hey, listen, you should call
Yeah,
these ones first. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. It's like we know that they answer. It's a
do.
great insight to get. Yeah.
And also, Smart Lead has something similar. I don't know how, I know they rolled it out. I don't even know if we're using this function, but if an email bounces and they recognize that, they will like see that internally. And if other companies are starting to send to that email, they will like automatically remove it or notify you, which is cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very cool. And look, and that's the benefit of some of the newer and larger platforms now as well. Smart Lead, Instant Lead's another one that's really come to the fore in the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys are growing quickly, and the features. It's hard to actually keep up with the amount of new features that these platforms are
Mm-hmm.
bringing out. I think you can literally, as an organisation, sign up to either of those platforms now, and virtually with the press of a button, get as many domains as you need, as many emails set up as you need, set up a campaign. I think you can even get the data through them now to a certain extent and be able to press a campaign without, having to go anywhere else.
Yeah, I think you can with Instantly. I don't, in terms of getting the data, I'm not positive on the Smart Lead,
Oh, okay.
but
Yeah.
it is a cool feature that you can actually, if you don't have a ton of cash flow, but that's something you could do all in under one platform. That's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Just as an aside and as a point of interest, how hard do you push Orem when you're dialing? Is it running the 10 parallel lines at a time, or 3 or 5, or?
I set as an admin, I maxed out the parallel at 6 for the company, and we even recommend less than that. You're just what we found. Yeah, it sounds great, but what we found is you tend to burn your numbers and you burn your list pretty quick. So I'm pretty sure I have it set at 6, and then we recommend a lot lower than that with our team.
Yeah, yeah. Look, it's interesting. I've sat in because I was doing cold calling for our business. I sat in and did a test drive with Orem, and I personally love Orem. I think it's probably one of the best platforms. And I found exactly the same thing. I got all excited and thought, okay, well, let's run it at 10. But there's all of a sudden there's 3 or 4 calls have answered all at the same time, and they've had to hang up on 3 and put through to 1. It's like, okay, I get it. Why you'd crank it down. And for me, it was
Mhm.
about 3. 3 was enough back in the day when the data was different and people are answering phone calls, etc. So, how do you think that AI is going to change your business in the future? Do you have anything on the horizon, or any wish list that when it gets to a certain capability, then that's something you're going to jump on? Any pain points that you're hoping
Um,
it'll fix?
it's insane the some of the things you can do on the back end with AI, and so we're starting to use that to our advantage. But one thing I'm watching out for, just being in the lead gen space, and maybe you are too, is just like how the AI SDR evolves. Right now you can't make cold calls. Can't make AI cold calls, but
Yep.
they're, they're just, you see these things spinning up all the time. These companies creating these AI assistants, or what are they called? AI.
Agents.
agents. Thank you. Um, Everywhere. So I'm just like I'm closely watching to see how that evolves because that could affect the our businesses moving forward. Right. So that's what I'm keeping an eye on. Right now, it's great. They're not really working that well. Most of the feedback I see is like 90% of them are not working well, or they're like spamming the market. You see some weird, like good results to start, and then it falls off pretty quick.
Yeah.
But you should assume AI will get better.
Look,
So
I agree 100%. If you're not working to that assumption, then, you probably got your head in the sand. I think from what I've seen so far, it seems to be there's a couple of insurance companies that have started to use AI to follow up very strong inbound inquiries that have come in where they've got enough information to know specifically the product that they're inquiring about. I saw that about 6 months ago. I should actually touch base again to see how that is maintained. There was a level of satisfaction there, but it was a very low level of support call. It was like following up an inbound form fill that had been needed where they'd ask for a bit more information. And then if you wanted somebody to call, book a time for a call or transfer you over to human, something along those lines. So it was, it will definitely get to the stage. Whether it'll actually get to the point of cold calling itself. I played around with a couple of different platforms that espouse the ability to make cold calls. Um, One, it's illegal, but two, it was just fascinating. So I thought I've got to see how this actually works. And
yeah.
it's very, very difficult. I found it very difficult to get it anywhere near having a solid cold call conversation. It was very easy to get it off track. It was very
Hmm.
easy for it made a lot of mistakes. And look, I mucked around because of the space that we play in. I was actually, sort of testing it for well over 6 months. And then in the end, I just gave up and thought, it was getting better, but very, very slowly. And it was a long, long way from being, where it needs to be. Who knows? I
Yeah.
mean, maybe in the last 6 months, there's been enough advancement that it's changed.
Yeah. I got a cold call. I'm starting to pick up more cold calls. Not only to hear the pitch, but I actually found I'm getting more and more relevant cold calls, like clients calling about an invoice and like actually I'm like, oh, really thankful I answered that. Things like that. But I got a cold call and I assume I kind of got the sense it was AI. And after I said hello, I just didn't say anything, and then they didn't say anything. And then it went on for like 15, 20 seconds. So I'm like, this is for sure AI. I just hung up because I know a human would have said something. So yeah, it's got some work to do. But one thing I will say is I do think on the inbound, there's a much bigger use case. We were working with a company that I never got to see the actual AI in action. I was hearing about it though, and they were replacing call centers. So call centers that have a ton of inbound traffic for particular products. And so when they were getting huge inbound volume, rather than contact centers having to staff for a certain like seasonality, it was just like, you don't need to do that. You can have this AI take calls around the clock. And no matter high season or low season, it's just taking it. And it was like, and it can book calls. And it was like, it's actually a YC backed company. So it was like pretty impressive to see that it was like actually replacing customer service in some cases.
I think that's the very first place it will go, certainly for non-complex sales, non-complex products. I think as an organization, we're safe for a little while yet. For starters, I think there's just a general desire for the companies that we deal with to have human beings involved in the process.
Yeah.
That's our underlying purpose and philosophy. Really, is that we are all about the people side of things. There's going to be businesses that will move very quickly to AI, and I'm sure as soon as it's available and working well, that will be the path they go. But I think certainly for the more complex sales, for the higher value sales, it still takes a human to human. And I've said this a couple of times now. I do see one day where you'll have an AI provider bot talking to an AI customer bot, and they'll be saying, the customer bot will say, these are the problems we're trying to solve. And maybe even one step further, you have an AI procurement bot that just you come into and says, these are problems I've got to solve. It goes to the marketplace and finds all the providers that will
Yeah,
solve
I
that
can see that
problem. And then,
happening.
and then you just end up with sitting there as an exec with a, floated up your procurement manager, maybe, who just sees all of this AI produced options and alternatives where they've already gone through all of the use cases and pros and cons, where it's really, you're sitting at the top to make a decision as opposed to doing all of the grunt work on the way through. So
Hmm.
I can see that type of thing happening. And Do you see any emerging trends in go-to-market strategies, sort of 2025 and beyond? Is there anything that you see that's new that's sort of coming through that you've, raised the eyebrows with?
I would say getting people internally that know how to use AI is going to be huge. I think a lot of it isn't even being used to its full capabilities. Like, we use Airtable internally, and one of the guys on my team was starting to learn more about it. And we're just scratching the surface. It's actually this tool is really powerful with its capabilities. So I think, and that's just a small little example, but I think getting people in place to enable your sales team to allow, so they don't have to do much back end work. That's the common complaint in sales, logging all these different things in the CRM and meetings. And so the more you can enable your sales team to take off some of this back end work, and then they can focus on the phones and prospecting and research, I think that's going to make your sales team much more efficient.
Yeah, it's always been the bane of most salespeople's lives, isn't it? Updating the CRM, the admin side of things.
Fun.
I'm with you. I think from a role perspective or a position, the capability to utilize and leverage AI throughout an organization is going to be, one of the most valuable roles, I think, in any organization moving forward. It will be the role that's able to increase productivity, increase efficiencies, reduce costs, and help leverage growth, I think, out of a much lower resource base. As much as, and it's a funny way to look at it, I think, but, as much energy as it takes to run AI, on the other side, the resources that I wonder if they're looking at the other side, and that the resources that AI replaces and takes out of an organization, whether that's factored into the equation or not, because there's no doubt once you start to leverage AI properly, it's a multiple of 10 or 20. It's not just 1.5 times better. It's like, personally, I'm doing now, from a marketing perspective, the chat with my co-founder the other day, he said, you're literally doing what feels like we've got a marketing team of 30 people in the business, and it's all coming from virtually one person. And it's,
crazy.
I wouldn't have been able to do it without leveraging tools like Descript, for instance. This
What's
podcast
that?
we're on now, it's the podcast that we're recording now is being recorded in a platform called Squadcast, which was acquired by Descript. Descript is a video editing platform that allows you to edit the video in the transcript. You don't have to go downstairs and look at the bars and all the rest of it. It lets you actually remove spacing, change words. It's got your AI voice in there. If you want to change something that you've said, you can retype it in and it'll automatically generate the
Oh,
words.
that's cool.
It'll go through and put studio sound across everything. It will change where your eyes are looking and put you back at the camera. I've got a problem because my camera's a bit higher than my screen here. I mentioned studio sound. It will go through and pull out 20, 30, 40 clips to use in social media. It will give you the text to put in each of those clips in the social media. It is a tool that alone for this podcast and generating social content. Oh, bless you.
It was lightning. Scared
Was
me.
it lightning? Oh,
Yeah.
I thought it was a sneeze. Wow. And so, yeah, I mean, that technology like that is really what's allowed me to start to crank up the social side of the marketing aspect that we're doing. So it's, I think it's one of those things where if you're not on the wave, you're going to get dumped by the wave.
Yeah. What I did is like, look, I'm no AI expert. I just hired an automation team. That's their focus. And so they have all these capabilities, and I don't have to spend time doing it, and they can implement all this stuff for me, which is great across all these different tools. And then they come with their own set of tools that they can use as well. So it's been great.
Excellent. And have you hired them in-house, or are they fractional? Or?
No, they're an agency. They have other clients as well.
Yeah, yeah. Look, from my perspective, I think that's almost the best way to go, certainly at our stage organisations, on the simple fact that with them having so much exposure to other organisations and other tools and ideas that they can leverage from for you as well, I think that's a great way to do it. The last thing I'd want to do is probably bring someone in and confine them to our little bubble at the moment.
Yeah. One of the benefits of the in-house is like just the turnaround time's much quicker. So anyone listening, like if you have the budget to do it in-house, like the turnaround time and the communication, just understanding your business is much better. The benefit of an agency is like they just come with a wide set of, you're using multiple people to attack one problem. Whereas if you hire someone in house, it's just one person and they may not know how to do it. So some trade-offs there.
John, what's the biggest challenge you're struggling with at the moment, or dealing with, facing in your business?
I would say the types of clients we're bringing on and setting expectations for them is one of the big ones, right? It's what we do. And almost everyone needs it. Everyone's wanting more sales, more leads, more appointments. Everyone wants it, right? There's never enough. But the question is, you don't want to bring on the wrong client and set the wrong expectations. So it's about getting all those questions out up front, whether they know them or not, and trying to set those expectations. Because unfortunately, especially when working with product-led founders and who haven't done sales before, they don't realize what is required and type of information that you can gather. And so sometimes people will come in with 2 to 3x our expectation versus theirs. It's like, sometimes we'll have to turn clients away, or you just say like, look, I'm not willing to engage unless we bring down that agreed upon metric. So that's, and it's the tough thing there, Terry, is you don't know how it's going to go until you start. That's the hardest thing. I've been wrong we brought on a client. They actually just about hit a year with us. I didn't think it was going to work. And it's been kick ass. They've been like really good because they have a very unique product and they don't really have many competitors. So even though they don't have everything built out, like I was wrong. But then I've also brought on clients and like, oh, this looks really, really great. Like we're going to turn this into a long-term partnership. And I was wrong. Like it was very hard, crowded market. You're targeting IT or security type titles and they don't want to talk to you. And so it's very challenging to know. Imagine you're an SDR and you're applying for a role and the person hiring you tells you, well, how many meetings are you going to book? Or how, it's like, well, I don't know. I've never worked with you guys before. It's challenging to quote you on.
Yeah. So many people want guarantees. I'm in exactly the same boat. It's probably the biggest challenge we have as well, because that one question is, well, what can we expect? And, I can say, well, the worst results we've ever delivered has been an increase of a very, very capable team's conversion rates by 38%. And we took sales qualified, not marketing. This is sales qualified to your requirements on ICP, 38%. On the upside, 2,400%. Now, that was a pretty shitty website that didn't have the right call to actions. Mm-hmm. And so you're going to be somewhere in between that. Generally, we'll double your sales pipeline, we'll double your qualified pipeline that comes out. So, whatever your MQLs are that wash through, that finally end up as revenue opportunities as deals in your pipeline, then you should expect that'll just about double. In some cases, it doesn't quite get there. Sometimes it's a 50, 60% lift, which is still great and they're happy with. Other times I've been blown away and seen where, we've had one client that came on board, they had 300,000 website visitors a month.
Wow.
That's a lot. From what I've seen, I was thinking this is going to be, good, one of our, bigger enterprise clients. This is going to be excellent. We were having 1,000 conversations in between each lead we're delivering for them. The quality of the traffic was terrible. Their SEO company that they'd used prior was driving all of this traffic, but it was to research papers and it was to, students coming in and job seekers. It was all things that did well from a credibility perspective in terms of having some traffic there, but they hadn't yet switched to bringing the quality traffic in as well. So we ended up having to put a chatbot on the front end that said, did you want to talk to sales or something else? So, and that's all it said. So they came to sales. So, in those instances, what we thought was going to be fantastic ended up still great clients today, but we had to do things a little bit differently to be able to get the outcomes for them.
Yeah, I think it's people are always going to, especially when they need to, if it's their initiative to sign up with chat metrics, right? They are going to have a boss that needs to approve it. They want to look good. So they're always going to shoot for the best metrics so they can look good in front of their boss and why that was the right decision. And they want some type of guarantee that it'll work. But yeah, on the company, right? Some companies can offer guarantees. I'm talking outside the lead gen space, just whatever it may be. It's certainly something that comes up with us a lot, but we've gotten to the point where we just say, oh, you're talking to another company with a guarantee. Oh, you should go with them you should go with them. Right. That's not how we operate. And it's kind of the reality is like most of the companies that are offering the guarantees are not well established. They're begging for business.
And it's that guarantee is why they're trying to, using that guarantee is a way to try and increase their client base. But it's fraught with danger. It's fraught with danger. The only guarantee we give is that if we're not delivering value, there's no lock-in contracts. We're not going to try and hold you to anything. If we're not delivering value, then we're not going to charge. And we know, almost as soon as we go live on a website, we know with the level of engagement, we know what the quality of conversations are, whether we book a meeting in the first couple of conversations. There's ratios that we do know very quickly whether it's going to work or not. And been a couple of times where we've kicked off and within 2 days, I've gone back to the client and said, look, I don't think this is going to work. These are the reasons why. I'm happy to proceed, but we're going to have to change the commercial arrangement. This is what it's going to be like moving forward. In one case, they said yes, because we're adjusting our marketing and this is the feedback we needed to give us the impetus to do that. And then other times it's now, look, okay, that's where it's not going to work. It's not going to work. We shake hands and part company as
Yeah,
friends.
it happens.
It does. It does.
Yeah.
Have you ever had to fire a client?
There's certainly times where we've had to come to an agreement off of certain things because there's clients that aren't, they wanted better results, but look, they're under contract. And the other times is they shift things around so much that it doesn't really allow us time to actually, like you were talking earlier in our conversation, like moving around too much, you never really actually get the ability to say it worked or not. And so we have clients that are in such a scramble, but typically it's coming from their leadership on testing different markets and different channels that they're bouncing around so much that we never actually learn anything.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, sometimes and then they don't want to hear that. But so after a few months, you'll have to decide to part ways. But again, that goes back to what I was saying earlier, is like the more we can set expectations up front, like this is how it works. This is the time frame. Sometimes it works right away, but then we need to give it a few weeks and make adjustments. And the more you can set expectations up front, the better off these clients will be.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's the honesty and transparency in moving forward in any type of relationship. Your business is similar to ours in terms of, it's a service offer. There's a lot of potential vagueness in terms of the actual results we'll deliver. We can talk about past experiences, but in terms of your specific instance, I can't look at that and say, you know what, you've got 100,000 website visitors, we'll engage with 2.5%, then convert 4.8% of those. I mean, in some cases, we're engaging with nearly 50% of the website traffic, lower volume traffic, but are very super targeted in their marketing and advertising campaigns. We're engaging with 50% of with the traffic and converting 40% of that into leads for them.
Right.
At the other end, the example I gave where there's 300,000 visitors, where we're engaging less than 1%, but the reality is their outcomes still increased by 4 times. So what they were getting out of their pipeline before they had chat to now, they're still increased by 4 times. So I mean, it's difficult space, and to be honest with you, it's probably the one piece that I dislike the most is that the vagueness. I'm a bit of a straight shooter. I like to be able to say yes or no. It's the one piece of where I feel like I'm a bit wishy-washy with the answer that you give. The reality is I can't answer that for you. This is my experience. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. It is helpful is like you can go off of past experiences and you start to pick up on patterns like, yeah, I've encountered this situation before where it was this type of client and this type of website visitors, or for us, it was like this type of company size offering this service. And there's 70 other companies that do the same thing with no different, like no unique offering. They're all pretty similar. So you're like, up front, you're like, look, I've already gone down this road. You're going to face this challenge and this challenge. I just want you to know before we get started. So you can share that experience.
I wish it was the case. We've had 2 customers that were virtually identical. And the first one was brilliant in terms of what we were able to deliver. On the outside, they looked exactly the same. On everything from sales structure, marketing team, etc. One had excellent traffic. The other one had terrible traffic. And so even from everything looking the same on the outside, until you actually go live with website traffic, you just don't know what it's going to be. They had the only difference between the 2 was the number of leads that they were generating from the website from the beginning themselves. That's the only tip that gives us a little bit of a hint in terms of what it might be like. But I've had this similar situation where they've had low levels of lead generation, and then we've just blown it out of the water because there's just been some piece in their website that hasn't resonated with the website
Mhm.
visitors, that they've not, like you said earlier, there's so many aspects to get somebody to click on that sign up or book a demo form,
Yeah.
book a demo button. There's so many aspects to it that, you never really do know for sure. But what's the
Yeah.
most surprising thing since you've been with Level Up, or you've built Level Up? What's the most surprising thing that you've learned along the way?
This is going to sound really silly and obvious, but listening to your customers and what they have to say in terms of feedback. Oftentimes, I know a lot of CEOs have a big ego. They think they know this is the way it needs to be done. And like a lot of our success has just been listening to what our clients have asked for. Hey, yeah, we're really happy, but it'd be great if you offered this, or if you had this service too, we'd pay double for that. And so you start realizing, like, can I deliver that? Can I partner with somebody? Should I hire for that? And it's like all of a sudden your ability to deliver, plus then you have somebody that's willing to like be your first client is great. So you build those relationships, you build that trust. And it sounds so silly, but just listening to what their pain points are and what they want has allowed us to make adjustments as we've gone. Because we like, for example, we didn't offer cold calling before. We just didn't. We did email and
Right.
LinkedIn and list building. And so like now that's like the
Okay.
bulk of where our business comes from and from
Yeah,
listening to
cool.
our clients. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, look, we've sort of made a very definite decision to be very, very niche in what we do. We do live chat, and we sit in live chat. We've got, through customers asking us to, we do actually handle some other channels as well. So we've got a couple of clients that we do the inbound emails for, and we'll handle that. And, we've got some unique ways of doing that, because what comes in through email can sometimes be difficult to have a higher conversion rate on. We've built some processes around that really sort of ramps that up, utilizing some things, bringing them back into live chat pages and so forth. But our core business is live chat. We stick to that.
Mm.
We know it inside out, and it'll change over time as AI increases. I mean, we leverage AI now to help the team out. There's no doubt about that. Whether we get to the point, and again, part of our philosophy is that we're a human first business. We do what we do so that people have got jobs and can feed their families. So um, whether we get to the point where we do offer an AI front end at any point in time, look, I'm not 100% sure. I'll never say never, but it's something that, unless we got to a stage where there was absolutely no appetite for what we were doing, we could do it today from a capability perspective. Whether we've got a desire to do it, it's just one of those things. The market will tell us. We'll listen to the customers and see what they
Yeah.
say. Yeah.
I think the human part that you brought up, you said you're a human first business, I think is very important. And it's sometimes when a client will decide to go with us, we'll say, because we have a lot of competition. Hey, why'd you go with us? And one of the common things they'll say is like, I felt like there was no one hiding behind a computer screen. Like there was a very human aspect to the process. Like I knew who I was dealing with. I knew who I would be dealing with post sale. And like, it didn't seem so, yeah, there's like they knew who they were dealing with. There was a very human aspect to it is what the reason is. Like, okay, we need to dive into that more and leverage that, because what they're telling us is that a lot of other companies, they don't have that. Like they have infographics. They're just like, don't know who they're dealing with. And it's just interesting feedback. I think if you can, in your space, continue to be human, it'll help
It,
out.
it, it's really interesting. I think in 2020, when we are all forced to work from home, some of the chat conversations that I've seen happen have been almost just people wanting to have a conversation. It's been a valid inquiry. The person's at the website for a reason, but then the conversation just takes a different path because I want to have a chat with somebody. It's almost like there's this yearn for connection. And
Mm-hmm.
personally, my belief is that, as AI starts to infiltrate every part of our lives and we become less and less reliant on people, I think that there's going to be, as human beings, a greater desire for human interaction. And I think we'll see AI interactions devalued, and I think we'll see human interactions valued more highly. That's my philosophy on things anyway. So I think, first with the pandemic and now with AI, I think we're just seeing this a desire for a human connection a lot more than necessarily. I think it was taken for granted in the past. Now it's valued a lot
Yeah.
more. Hmm.
Yeah. I agree.
Is is there anything that I should have asked you that I haven't?
No, I think this has been a great discussion. I feel like we could keep going, but it's up to you on, what topics or directions you want to go. But lots of good. It's cool to be like founder to founder and hear about your stories and what you're facing, even though you're a software and we're not. Setting expectations with clients and like understanding who's going to be a good client versus not. Or I guess I should take a step back, like not knowing who will be a good client until you start, but having a sense before you start with them. It's just really cool to have these types of conversations and then also get your perspective on what's working for your company and your business, what's lead gen.
We're not software.
I thought I thought you like had the chat bot on the website.
It's not a chatbot. It's actually human beings in there, and so we're
Oh,
software agnostic. It's all human
oh,
beings. That's why I say when we're human first, we're people first. That's why I talk about the
yeah.
AI on the front end. I don't know. So no, it's our team sits in there. So when I talk about that example of that inbound prospect or lead from Reddit, we've got human beings live in 3 days on their website booking sales qualified
I
meetings
see.
for them. Yeah. So
So
it's
do they
you
handle
talk
the
about
chat, the inbound chats?
correct.
I see. I see.
Correct. Yeah. So that's what we do. But yeah, it's and that's why I've really enjoyed this conversation because there are so many similarities in what we do. It's not software; it is a service that we're offering. It's like you're virtually outsourcing staff. If you want to put it into a particular niche, you're just outsourcing staff. I mean, that's you're providing. But when you talk about the product of your product, which is where we should be having the conversation with the client, you're doing exactly the same thing we are, except you're doing it in an outbound process. We're doing it from
Mm.
we're optimizing their inbound process, but we're both delivering qualified pipeline for the clients. And I love being in this space. Um, I've had a pretty long career in the steel industry and in organizations, firstly, that were smaller and private companies, and then large public companies that had a big chunk of the market share, even though they wouldn't admit to that because acquisitions would be, held up by the competition bureau and so forth. But when you're in a large market share, it's and you've got virtually most of the market covered, you get a complacency through the business where the sales reps believe that they're being impacted by the market. They know all of the customers, there's nowhere else that they've got to go. Their hands are tied, they've got handcuffs on, they can't grow the business. Then you walk into a market and you realize that, this guy that's been operating as the sales rep that's been in this market for 5 years has had the blinkers on. And in the last 5 years, there's been so many new businesses grow that have gone to competitors, and new competitors have parked up that, their market share in that market's gone from 60% down to 30%. And the rep's not even been aware of it because they've just sat comfortable with where they are. And at the pointy end with what we do, both from an inbound and even more so from an outbound perspective, you turn that on its head. You're out, you're hunting. It's like it's the hunters, the hunting side of the sales world, and it's an area that just really resonates for me, and I enjoy it. I think it's one of those things to the biggest challenge or the greatest satisfaction I get when we have a new client come on board is an understanding that they've been getting 15 marketing qualified leads come from their website that then goes through to sales, and they'll trim that back down to 7 or 8 each month. And, the sales team sort of wishes they were better qualified. Then in the first month that we're there, and all of a sudden there's 30 sales qualified leads have gone into the pipeline, and you see hearing feedback from marketing that, where our sales has asked, can we do any more of this? And, all of a sudden the whole environment in there, the relationship between sales and marketing has changed because you've been able to go and save sales time because they're not dealing with the MQLs anymore. Well, not through the web-based MQLs anyway. And they're enjoying the additional opportunities. It's probably the biggest satisfaction that I get.
That's
Um,
great.
the way we charge is very risky. There's a lot of risk that we take on board, and that's why, as part of the onboarding process or discovery process, we ask how many leads they're getting from the website now. Because if they're not getting any, there's no market fit, and it doesn't matter
Hmm.
how many chats we have; they're probably not going to get any at all. So
How do you,
yeah,
so yeah, so how do you charge, by the way? Is it off a per
well,
inbound?
it's
How
per
does that
lead.
work?
No, it's
Per
per
lead
lead. So
that
yeah,
you
it's per
generate?
lead. So that's right. So in the conversations we have with your website visitors, when we qualify to your requirements, whatever that might be, if it's just band, that's fine. If you want to know organization size, role, etc., if somebody meets that ICP or the qualification criteria, then we book them into a calendar meeting with one of the account executives. Then that's what we charge for. We've
I
got
see.
minimum expectations. You need to be getting 10 to 20 a month to make it work for us, but we just charge purely on that basis. And it's like, we there's a lot of conversation in the beginning between my co-founder and I as to how we would charge. I was very concerned about that. I was concerned on the basis that we don't know the quality of their website traffic. We've got to put a
Mhm.
lot of trust in them. And I was convinced, he just said to me, look, it's like this. We both agree we want the business to deliver extraordinary value. And if we're not delivering value, then we don't want to charge. We'd rather, and no locking contracts. We don't want people to be locked into some contract that they're paying and not getting any value for. And so we made the decision to go on a per lead basis. And I look back over it. Look, there have been a couple of clients that have taken advantage, that have set us up with one particular criteria, and we've delivered against that criteria. And then they've come back at the end of the month and wanted to change the criteria and drop 50% of the leads out that we've pushed through, which we did. And then the next month, when we started booking to the new higher criteria with less leads, then they wanted to come back and go back to the first criteria again. So it was like, it
All
was a
over the
bit of muck.
place.
Look, change around, the first, I think that took them by surprise, the impact we had in the very first instance. I mean, the worst result to date, still that we've had that 38% increase was, the white pages and yellow pages. Here in Australia, I was in a meeting to do the proposal with the White Pages marketing team, and so they had the head of revenue, CMO, head of digital, and head of the CRM. And these guys it's a many thousand organization. It's a purely a marketing business that like these phone directories that had expanded out into doing SEO and websites for their customers and all that sort of stuff.
Hmm.
They're used to tweaking their website to get a conversion increase of 0.2%, of 0.3, 0.5% increase was a big increase of conversion rate for them. I stood there and said, look, I'm going to guarantee you, this was in the very early days, so I was a bit on the desperate stage, and it was our biggest deal at the time. I said, look, I'll guarantee a 25% increase in your conversion rate. And they literally, two of them burst out laughing. I lost all credibility. It scared the hell out of me. I watched their faces. It was like, I realized I'd made a big mistake. Um, and look, long story short, we recovered it enough to say that they signed up. We ran a pilot. And at the 6 week mark, the CMO actually took me and my business founder out to lunch and rattled off the 15. We knew there was 15 points of value that you get from having live chat on your website. And he rattled off, it was about 12 of the 15 value points, to the extent that they were using a
Solid.
digital agency for their advertising and they were running PPC campaigns. Well, when we were chatting, we could see that it's White Pages. What they wanted, the traffic they wanted coming to the website was business traffic. That's actually the business traffic that want to increase their either do a website with them, get a website done, or advertise with them and pay for advertising in the White Pages. But what was happening is they had a lot of traffic coming for people that were looking for phone numbers. And so
Hmm.
they went back
I
to the
see.
agency. They cut their budget by 60% with that agency and were able to increase the amount of qualified traffic because they went through, all the keyword campaigns that they were running and took all the search traffic out of it. So, that was probably the aside from the 38% increase, that was the biggest win was that they also did that with a lot smaller budget than what they had in the past. So, and things like customer insights in terms of, have you got this feature? It's just like you said, listen to the customer. You don't get
Hmm.
an opportunity to listen to the customer in any more detail than live chatting with all the people. So on the website.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good selling point.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I just need to get the message out there a bit better. So, all right, John. Look, it's been a great conversation. Thank you. Don't want to talk for too much longer. I'm fearful that we'll end up when I catch up with you guys in February that won't have too much to talk about. But I'm sure that won't be
We'll
the
have plenty to talk about.
case. All right. Well, look, is there anything else you'd like to add before I sign off?
No, if you're interested in sales development and appointment setting, you can go to levelupleads.io or check me out on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active there. You can just search into the chat, John Karsant, and you'll find me there. Connect with me, and yeah, we can have a conversation.
Yep. And we'll have all those links below. Is there anything good that you're reading at the moment, or that you'd recommend as far as sales leaders and marketing leaders and founders that are the main audience for us?
Nothing right now sales related. Like one book I always go back to and read a lot is How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's an old book, but a lot of the principles still apply today on just how to deal with people and what's important to them and putting the spotlight on them and things like that. And it still carries a lot of weight today.
I've got it on the bookshelf right there.
Oh, nice. I
Yeah,
love that book.
absolutely. That's a great offer. What about any good movies? Seen any good movies lately?
I don't really watch many movies, and it's not by on purpose. I just don't make it out to watch movies anymore. How about you?
No, I'm in the same boat. I don't. Work is my leisure. Actually, as strange as that sounds, I mean, I like to get out and do walking, got a bit of get out on the jet ski and that sort of thing. But generally, I think when you love what you do, you don't work a day in your life, and so don't watch too many movies. I watched a very interesting Netflix series over quite a long time. It took me to get through it, called It'll Come to Me, American. I'll find it. I'll put the
Not a
link
great
below.
reference. I don't watch the shows that much either. I'll
Yeah,
watch
yeah.
sports like we were talking about the Australian Open before this conversation a bit, and like I'll watch the basketball and sports that I will tune into.
I'll watch a bit of UFC.
Yeah, a little
I
bit
don't
too.
mind the UFC. Yeah, yeah. All right, John. Look, thanks very much. It's been an excellent conversation today. Really appreciate the time. It certainly has been a great nearly hour and a half. I've enjoyed the conversation immensely. We'll have all the links below for everybody, and thanks for joining us on the chat.
Thanks for having me on, Terry. Appreciate it.
Been a pleasure.